like to call this GRCSU meeting for August 6th to order at 6 p.m. Everyone could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Meredith, you're on there twice and one's not muted. Just let you know. All right. Thank you. So next up is the approval of the agenda. Chris, you had something to add, I believe. Oh, I thought you were going to talk about the resignations.
No, I don't.
Not tonight.
Yeah, we don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Motion.
Mike makes a motion to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Public comments. I do not see anyone from the public here tonight, so we're going to move on. Consent agenda. There's a approval of 3 sets of minutes, one from the regular board retreat on July 2nd, and 2 for negotiations, one on July 18th and one on July 30th. I had one correction on page 4 of the July 2nd minutes. It stated that we were hoping to keep all meetings to an hour, and I believe it was 2 hours. So I just wanted that corrected.
I'll make the motion for July 2nd, July 18th, July 30th.
With the corrections?
With corrections. Yes.
Thank you, Mike. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Approval of warrants. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Colin. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Superintendent's report.
Thanks, Tina. I'll be quick tonight. Just a couple housekeeping items. In your the GRCSU board resource folder, there is a copy of each school's capital maintenance plan. These are also included in your local board folders as well. Our goal would be in September at the local level to invite the facilities directors to these meetings to have a conversation around the 5-year plan, to start to look at budgeting and considerations around that. We also have placed a copy of the student parent handbooks in the local board folders for your review. So if you like, I could place all the handbooks in the GRCSU as well, so you can see what the other handbooks look like. That would be a simple shift. So if the board would like that, I can do that as well, since we did that with the 5-year plans, just out of an SU-wide approach, so we can see, how aligned we are in certain areas, and other areas, we need to improve alignment. So that might give you an idea. So I know one of the separate bullet items were PCB update. I'll just quickly talk about this. I would discuss this more at the local level. In my report, I kind of give you an update of where each of our buildings are at with PCBs. I know that Rutland Town has, received an updated report. I'm sorry, as well as Pulteney High School, and a lot of these. So the Rutland Town, there'll be a meeting. Well, Craig Starrett, who is from Harper Environmental, will be presenting at the Rutland Town board meeting just to discuss some remediation that will need to occur at Rutland Town School. It's going to go through the plan. It's going to take place the next couple of weeks. So there'll be an opportunity for the public to comment, discuss, provide feedback there. But and then Pulteney High School, it will. The only change for that is just they have to update monitoring. A lot of the issue that we see during the summer, particularly as we button up the buildings, we close areas off. You may see a rise in some of the levels, particularly like if it was, say, an office space that we just close the doors during the summer. The heat rate, the heat levels rise. So you will see a general uptick. I know we talked with the DEC, Department of Health, as well as Craig from Harper Environmental, and they said that's a natural occurrence. It's no different than like you close down your basements, you have a higher concentration. They are keeping a close eye on this with monitoring. There aren't any real concerns. The issue that we're going to run up against is just around contractors. I think that's every school and district in the state of Vermont. So the state will start looking at prioritizing plans and projects. So even though we may find in one of our schools that there's some mitigation or remediation, or I should say remediation that needs to be taken care of, we might fall a little bit lower on the priority level just because of where our levels are at or where that room is. So like say if it's like a utility closet that no students or staff access, that will probably fall pretty low on the priority list as they're looking at addressing schools or districts that have classrooms that need to have immediate remediation. So we'll continue to keep this you updated. I know Wells and Middletown, they have been pushed back, as you can see here, that Wells Village has been pushed back till January 1st to March 31st, 2026, and Middletown Springs is July through September 2025. The only impact that they may have is just around funding. And I think that's always been a concern, is we know that we just don't have an endless pool of resources and money in the state, that there will come a point in time where that money will run out. Hopefully it won't be, and hopefully Wells and Middletown will get the all clear and we'll be good to go. But we'll see what happens there. But we'll try to keep you updated more closely as we go through. But like I said, a lot of these discussions will happen more at the local level. But I think the SU, particularly as we start to look at just impacts, particularly if there's a major adjustment, let's say if for one reason or another a school needs to close down a wing, or we may have to look at more of an SU approach to remediation, we'll bring the SU in. We're not there, so knock on wood, we're okay right now. All right.
Okay.
The rest of this just for information, so if you have any questions, I'm more happy to answer them.
I was just curious how the legislative change with, how you see that affecting what you do or what Lewis does for getting construction approved. I think that was mostly what that
Are
was.
you talking about
the Act 183?
Yeah, the excess. Lewis, do you want to? So.
The exit spending threshold, so that was
Yeah.
something that was in place prior to Act 127. None of our schools were close to that number prior to Act 127. We're still nowhere near that number. We don't know what the actual number is until next year. But based on the estimate we received from the state, it's going to be approximately $16,000. And our highest spending per pupil right now is $13,417. So we're not close to that excess spending threshold.
Okay, good. Thank you.
I want to reiterate that we're nowhere near close to that excess spending threshold. It's important for our taxpayers and our community members to know that we are well below that excess
Our spending per pupil ranges from $10,229 is our lowest to $13,417. So all of our schools are way below.
Yes.
Except if we do approve capital expenditure bonds, they will count towards our education spending, unlike like a Burlington who got theirs in before July 1 this year. Moving forward. Another important part of the legislature.
Yes.
If we're looking at capital improvements
Yes.
and bonding it out.
Yep.
And it also says that AOE has a pre-approval review process for construction as well. So that's why I was kind of wondering if that's going to change how we do things.
I think it's more of oversight. I think as they're trying to rein in construction, I think kind of what Colin just alluded to, just make sure that even before this, there was a concern around the aging of our facilities across the state of Vermont and the total cost and how construction is funded. So with the 5-year maintenance plans, the audits that they did in all the schools, I think it's really just trying to get a better understanding in terms of where we're at and help prioritize.
So did they already approve that 5-year plan, or do we have to submit that 5-year plan to the AOE? That's what I was curious.
We have not heard yet in terms of what we have to do. So
Okay.
we have 5-year plans in place, so we're waiting for more information on that.
Okay.
So we'll be ready to submit whenever they ask us to submit that. And then I'm sure we may get some feedback. And
There's
or
also some
minute.
changes to the bid law,
Yep.
which are going into effect. There's a webinar I think later this week that I'm part of. So I don't have those details, but once I have those details, I'll report them out.
Thank you. And then Lisa's not here.
No, so but we have included in the board packet the FastBridge data report, as well as the copy of the GRCSU SIP or continuous improvement plan. So if there are any questions or, that like to be addressed or answered in September, please just let me know. You can email me or email Lisa, and we will go over all that at that time.
So do you prefer that they email you or they email Lisa?
I maybe email both of us.
Okay, CC.
Yeah, that'd be good.
And then I just wanted to add on to that in order to try to keep our meetings at 2 hours or less, we're going to try to do a new process where we present information like this at one meeting, and then if there's any information that you feel like it's missing, or like Chris said, if you have any questions, you can ask those questions, and then at the following meeting is when we'll answer questions, get the extra feedback that you felt like was missing. That way it gives us a little bit more time to process this type of information, and it also will save time. We're hoping to cut down on, having someone read a presentation word by word versus, having a month to really digest it and ask questions back and forth, and then coming back and just making sure that we're comfortable with what it said before moving on. So it's just something new we're going to try to see if we can reduce time at meetings.
And Tina, if you don't mind, maybe yield just a few minutes of my time. I know we have Tammy Rescott here, just who some of you may have met, some of you may not. But it's Tammy Rescott, who's thankfully agreed to assist us this year as the Director of Student Sports. So I just wanted to introduce Tammy Rescott, and then Tammy, just if you just a couple minutes, just say how things are going, transition, and if you don't want. So.
It's going well. Actually, it's going really well. I have a wonderful staff, and my admin assistant, Marissa, is wonderful. And I'm working with probably 90% of the people I worked with when I was here before. So it is, going good. You're aware of the special programs that Bill had started. So that's kind of like my niche. So I'm excited to get the kids into the programs in school starting and see how that's going, and, get the wellness center kind of structured a little bit more, and get the life skills program up and going. I know, I'm sorry. And, just move that forward and get going. But yeah. And first thing I did was Idea B grant. Thanks to Lewis, get it going. But I said I'd do it for a year. But my husband, like I said, he retired, and I think he's enjoying that I'm not home, to be honest. So this may be something that I hang in there for a little bit. Who knows?
Great.
It is going well.
And Tammy and I and Lewis and Lisa have talked. I think some important conversation as we enter the fall is really about the wellness program and where we see this program going and evolving, and what role Tammy can play in moving that forward. So I think that's, like I said, Bill had brought that into year one, but I think part of our discussion was to see where we're at, where we wanted to grow that from. So I think that's a good conversation for us to have as an SU.
So what would more structure for the program mean exactly?
So I'm still following up on, what was the idea of starting this, right? And where was it going? So when I think of starting the wellness center, what's the criteria for a student to be placed at the wellness center? So I'm kind of a data fanatic. So when a school is talking about referring a child to the wellness center, then what's that paperwork? What's the data? What have we done at the building level? So does that child fit in the wellness center? What type of students are we treating at the wellness center? And what are the services that we're providing there? And what is the goal of the wellness center? And what's the end goal for that student? So those are kind of some of the things we want to kind of get down and on paper or in a procedure, so that all the schools know that, so that when they have a child that is struggling and they've tried, they have exhausted everything that they have the tool in their toolkit within the building, then they'll know, well, does the wellness center, is that an option for this child at this point?
All right.
So I think that would be good for the buildings to know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought that was what was identified before we started the program, when we heard the proposal, all of that. To me, questions I'm looking to have answered are how many students are there, how long do they remain there, and how many students are we seeing throughout the year. I think that what we heard last year was much lower than the expectation that we had anticipated, and that students were staying longer than originally had been proposed. So the beginning criteria, I guess I'm a little perplexed why that's being reevaluated, since that was already structured to begin the program. So I feel like when I hear you speak, that we're starting at step one again, and we're further into this program, was my understanding.
We're not starting at step one. We're kind of looking at, see, when you start a specialized program, if you start accepting children with different disabilities and different needs, you're gonna have a program that's not structured, that's not targeting students, right? Because you're gonna have, I don't want to say chaos, but you're gonna have a lot of different needs going on at the same time. From what I read, right, from what I read out of Bill's files and what he had in his documents, right, the goal of this program was to teach coping skills and teach skills for these students to be in the regular classroom setting, the regular public education setting. And the goal was to bring those students in, assess their needs, develop a treatment plan, and then start reintegrating them back into the public school setting. Well, obviously, there's not necessarily a time frame that all the kids fit into, because it depends on what their disability is and how soon they buy into their treatment plan. I can tell you they have one student who was there the whole school year last year, and he is starting half days back into the public school system this year. So that is good. And by the end of next year, he will be back 100% in public school. So I think that that's the plan, but I think that we need it more concrete on what the criteria is for kiddos to be put into this program, just like the life skills program or the connections program at the high school. We know what the criteria is for a child to be in that program. I think it's only right that we have criteria to get into the wellness program.
And that was my understanding, that had already, and that students were assessed in their home schools before they were moved to the program. And the plan was already in place as they were moving. I mean, so it just seems like, I guess this happens every time someone new comes in. People reassess things and kind of re-examine to make it or just re-examine things. I had just hoped that this year programming was going to be a little more forward, that we would see more students in there. I think that the most we saw last year were 6. Did we see more than 6 last year?
I don't have the numbers on it.
Well, you know, we have this great MTSS system, right? Through that is the social emotional. I'm hoping that we don't have a lot of kids going through that program. I'm hoping that we're able to meet their needs at the building level. We have behaviorists, BCBAs, BTs, counselors in our buildings. We have behavioral paras in our buildings. I'm hoping that with the training and having Shannon Newell now back, that we will be able to meet the needs in the building, that we will be able to do that, and that the wellness center is for extreme kiddos, the ones that we cannot serve in our buildings.
I thought that part of the driving of this whole program was because of lack of capacity at therapeutic institutions.
Right.
What was the criteria for placing a student in one of those?
So
Why is it different from ours?
So that's where I'm trying to get at, like the therapeutic setting, like Manchester Village School, let's use that as an example. We have a child now that is not appropriate for the wellness center, right? We had him there last year and he actually needs more than the wellness center. So he couldn't be in the public school setting. We had him for a year in the public school setting. All kinds of data showing that he was not appropriate. Then we placed him at the wellness center, collected data for a year and not appropriate. And now he's going to the Manchester Village School. Therapeutic setting, right? So the criteria is exactly what I was just saying.
Students are.
Yeah.
What?
I don't know if this is public session.
I was like, I had just to interject that I love the interaction, but I don't think we were prepared. I was not prepared to
I wasn't
engage in
either.
this either, and I
No,
thought it was
this
more of a
one-
meet and greet.
I think it's more just as with any program, we continue to evaluate the growth and where we're going, but
Thank you.
yeah, I think it's, and I think even if Mr. Basic were still here, he'd be saying the same thing, that we need to evaluate, what went well last year, what didn't go well, and also, what's the trajectory and how do we continue to best serve, serve students in the RSU, and how this program can assist with that.
I mean, if I may follow up, I mean, capacity hasn't increased, right? It's gone down for therapeutic situations. So the need for us to have this is even greater, I think, this year.
Correct. I think we look at from a statewide perspective, that the access to therapeutic programs, it's what we have access to this year is less than last year. Last year was minimal at best. So that's just the reality of the world. So I think we're going to be addressing this situation throughout the course of the year, but also part of our strategic plan is how we can look at continue to build out programming that our students will benefit from. So I think it's an ongoing discussions. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So next up, contract recommendations, resignations and open positions. We have one professional staff, Elizabeth Volpe, who's a math interventionist at Quarry Valley, and then several support staff, extracurricular, and 3 resignations that are for informational purposes only. I will entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Mike. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next up, finance.
Good evening, everyone. So in the packet was the year-end financials for GRCSU. So for the general fund, there's for both general fund and special ed, there's a one-page summary, and then attached to it also is the revenue and expense reports at year end. So in the general fund, we ended the year with a surplus in the amount of $113,828.70. And I've highlighted the major components of that surplus, as well as what the breakdown would be for each district and what their refund amount would be. The major items that are contributing to the surplus is we had $23,000 in extra interest earnings due to higher interest rates. We had $27,000 in unspent funds from the prior year surplus that were put aside for the moving expenses. So we set aside $50,000 for moving expenses. We spent approximately $23,000. The other $27,000 is going back into this surplus. We had $68,000 in compensation savings due to the position cuts that were discussed earlier this year. And the remaining $18,000 savings is just from all the other categories. So the assessment refunds for IRA, it would be $2,640. Rutland Town is $32,350. Quarry Valley is $62,742. And Well Springs is $16,095. Those refunds have not been given back yet. Typically, when we get to around budget season, we decide how we want to handle those refunds. My recommendation would be to, there's 3 options. One, we can give it back in last year's. I wouldn't recommend that because all of our districts have ended with a surplus and you'll get those reports at your August meetings. The other option would be to give it back as a refund this year, and the third option would be to just apply it towards next year's assessment. My recommendation at this time would be to apply it towards next year's assessment, and we can discuss that during budget season when we present the first draft of the budget, and you can determine at that time how you want to handle it. But we already have a budget set for this year. We have local budgets that have surpluses, so it'll definitely help the budget. This next year's budget go a lot smoother, but that's up to the board on how they want to handle that. On the special ed side, we ended with a surplus of $478,000, and that is mostly due to a change in the calculation for the extraordinary reimbursement. So last year and not the year we just closed, but in FY23, we had extraordinary revenue budgeted under the old calculation, and same thing for FY24. That calculation added additional revenue. So that's for those students who are costing more than $65,000 a year. We get 95% back in reimbursement for every dollar over the $65,000, and that amount changes every year, the $65,000 number. But in addition, when that calculation changed, in addition to getting 95% back in reimbursement, we're also getting a lump sum of money back for the first portion of the $65,000, which was new. That part of the calculation was new for starting in FY23, and it's quite a surprise to many business managers. So based on that, we actually got additional $219,000 in revenue last year from the state after we had closed our books, which was just put into this year's revenue, and then an additional approximately $340,000 in additional revenue this year that was unbudgeted. So based on that surplus, I've also listed what the refund would be for special ed. So Ira's portion is $6,129. Rutland Town is $122,391. Wells Springs is $68,857, and Corey Valley is $281,509. Typically, I have given the special ed refunds back in the year that the budget just closed, or the year that just closed. But since we were running nice size surpluses in all of our districts already for last year, I did not refund that back yet. And I thought that we can also discuss during budget season, and we have those same three options. We can give it back to last year, we can give it back in this current year, or we can apply it towards FY26 budget. Again, at this time, my recommendation would be to apply that towards the FY26 budget. Any questions?
That's 65,000. Has that been increasing over the years, or is it decreasing, or
65.
the reimbursement number, the 65?
It changes every year. Yeah, it used to be 50,000, and then it was 60, and 60. I think this year it was actually $66,203 or something like that.
So it's not a predictable number.
No, it changes, and the percentage has changed too. It used to be 90%, and now it's 95%.
Is it restricted towards special ed, or is it just like, here's your refund?
It's not restricted. So this is the money that the schools pay out of their local budgets to the SU to go towards special ed expenses. So this is it's no longer considered special ed funds. It's just a refund to your local budgets.
So you're not looking for any motion tonight?
No, I will bring this back up when we start talking about budget to look for some. Unless you feel strongly that you want it applied to last year, then that would be better to know now, because then I can revise all of your year-end surplus amounts. But if you feel confident you want to use either this year or next year, then we can hold off on that discussion to a later date.
We'll wait till we talk about budgets. When are we going to start doing that, in September?
So typically we present the first draft of the SU budget in October, and we look to approve that in November. So we'll start talking budget timelines at the SU September meeting, and then in local meetings, it's usually October, we start to discuss timelines, and we look at the first draft in November. But it's coming up.
And then things change when we get the state numbers.
In January.
Correct. So right now, I mean, we start a few months, we have our numbers all set, but we don't usually get the state numbers until middle, end of December, and then continuing on after that.
So, question for you, Louis. So this 564,000 for special ed, where would I find that on your report? Would that be the last number of the unencumbered balance on the special ed?
The revenue, that's the revenue piece, that's not the surplus.
Oh,
amount.
yes, okay.
So the revenue amount, if you go to the special ed report, special ed revenue report, which is about halfway through, and you look under extraordinary reimbursement. So it's a one-page report, the revenue for last year. Extraordinary reimbursement, you can see that we budgeted 323,000. The actual was 669,000, and the difference was 345,000. That's for the current year. And then if you scroll down a little bit more on that page, you'll see prior year intensive adjustment, 219,000. That pertains to the same thing from last year. Our budget for this current year that we're in does have that new calculation built in for revenue.
So we won't have as high of a
For
surplus next
for that
year.
reason, no.
Thank you. All right. And anyone have any questions on the monthly reports? Louis, the curriculum software was already overspent. Was that because we got something new, or is that what we're going to spend for the year? I think I asked this question last year
Yeah,
too.
it's probably just a matter of the lines that it's in. I don't have that report in front of me, but that's I think that's Infinite Campus that we paid for. It's about $45,000 to $50,000.
Yeah, we budgeted 40, and it looks like we paid about 52.5.
So if you remember last year during the budget discussion, we wanted to increase that software line, and the board decided not to increase it. Last year we were going to increase it in this year's budget. This is a software that's used by all of our schools, and so in the past, the amounts were budgeted at the local level, and we've been moving those funds to the SU level to try to, because for all the SU programs like Jump Rope, FastBridge, all those ones that the whole SU is purchasing, it doesn't make sense for each school to pay for their own. It makes sense for the SU to pay for it and then just assess it out. Last year when we discussed it, the board was not in favor of that. So we probably will overspend that line and just need to bill back the districts for any overspend on that.
So your recommendation would be to pay for it at the supervisory level, and right now we're paying for it at the district level?
I think Greg also noted that because we're doing it at the SU, that we got discount. That was part of the.
For many of those programs, yes. So in the past, they were budgeted and paid for at the local level, and the district just paid for their portion of it. Just to streamline the process, it would make more sense for it to be at the SU level, and that was my proposal last year. However, just looking back at this last budget season and how much scrutiny the SU budget gets, I'm starting to question that decision and thinking maybe it makes sense for just to have it at the local level, because even though we're paying for it at the SU level, it doesn't increase the local district's budget because you need to pay for it one way or another. So take it out of the SU budget and just put it back where at the local level, and I'll deal with the bill backs, is what I'm thinking at this point.
There's no volume discount right now.
We get that discount either way. We're just cutting one check, and rather than putting it in the SU budget and assessing it, I'm putting it into a separate fund and then billing it back based on some
Percentage.
metric. The big difference would be actually for IRA, who is, if it's part of the budget, it gets assessed to everybody, where if it's a bill back, it would only be assessed based on student enrollment at the schools. So IRA would not be paying a portion of that if we're doing bill backs. But that's, I think my thoughts from last year are now changing, and so when we come to budget time, you'll probably hear me talk a little bit about that and with the new proposal. And I'll list all those softwares that we currently are using. Again, I mean, Infinite Campus is the most expensive. That's our data management system. That's approximately $50,000. And then we have like Jumpo, FastBridge, those type ones that are ranging anywhere between $7,000 and $12,000 a year.
Thank you.
As we roll out, like the budget discussions, it's good to, I think, have that communication to the public of, here's some of that SU assessment, or it isn't, I think it's obviously very convoluted, what the public's seeing, what they think they're getting. So these are good examples of how we can hopefully framework that to our local districts, where your money's going.
I think the public sees the SU budget and they think it's all just administration, but there's a lot of times where we're paying for stuff that is being used right at this ground level in the schools. And so, I mean, if it makes more sense for those expenses to be right in the school budgets and not the SU, then I think that's a discussion that we need to have.
It's probably easier for our citizens to see it that way rather than a percentage of one payment throughout the supervisory.
All right, so moving on
Optics versus logistics.
to old business. As discussed last meeting, we do need to officially approve our vision and mission statement. Just gonna find Chris's.
Screen share the.
Sure, that would be great, thank you. So the vision is engaged, empowered, and prepared for tomorrow. And the mission is, our mission is to engage and empower students to achieve academic and personal success, preparing them to be responsible citizens who embrace a love for learning. So I will take a motion to approve those.
I'll make the motion.
I'll take Eric on that one.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Vision and Mission Statement Committee and stakeholders. Next up is the superintendent evaluation. So the executive committee met prior to this meeting today, and I think we came up with a plan to at least present. We have decided to use the VSBA rubric, but we're going to tailor it a little bit, adding some comment sections, for instance, and just making it more pertainable to the SU. But we all liked that form of, that instrument to evaluate Chris, or whoever our superintendent is at the time. We also believe it's important, for part of the rubric, it asks information that we don't have the information for, such as basically how is Chris as a boss to staff and administration. So the executive committee is going to develop a survey to send out to administration so that we can get some feedback from that, so that we can do a better job of evaluating him. And we are also going to create a survey or some type of feedback document to send to local boards, so that local boards have an opportunity to weigh in from a district standpoint, and we'll be able to use that when we are completing our own evaluation. The thought was that each SU board member would complete the rubric using their local board's information and also their thoughts, and then they would submit that to the executive committee, who would collate the answers and the comments and present a final evaluation to Chris. And then through goal setting, after that, we'd be able to have some reflection and processing of that information. Let's see. The guideline or the timing or timeline for the year, we would create board goals at our retreat over the summer, and then discuss SU goals and superintendent goals over August and September. And that would be somewhat through the executive committee to help form those goals, and then those would be presented to the SU board in September. We then have check-ins in December and March. Chris would give his assessment on how he's doing, and we would just have some discussion of how things are going. And then in May, we would ask the local board to do their feedback, and then in June, the SU board would do their evaluation. And did I forget anything? Okay.
We have the report in July. From
And then we would just, we would have a reflection of how the process went at our board retreat in July. And if we want to make any changes for the following year, and we would have that as our annual time to adopt the rubric or change the rubric, and have that discussion then.
So just a point of clarification,
Mhm.
only the executive board will see what the actual evaluation.
No, it will be shared with everyone.
So you
the
said
SU
that
board.
we would all fill them out, give to you, you would collate them, and you would create the report. And
The executive-
And the executive committee would meet with Chris. At what point in there does this board see that?
When the final is, I think that what we had discussed was that we would invite everyone to the executive committee meeting where we're sharing it. We're still working that out, but we were not planning on having a full discussion with the board. We were having each individual member fill out the rubric and add their comments, and then the executive committee was putting it together.
But we operate as a board, not as individual members.
Right, so we were adding, so each of the rubrics would have a number, such as the proficiency. So like, not meeting expectations at all would be a 1, and exceeding expectations would be a 4. So say for one answer, 3 of us put 4, 3 of us put 3, 3 of us put 2. The average would be a 3, so the board came up with it as a 3. We averaged it, and that would be his evaluation. So it's from the board, and then all the comments would be collated.
into a report.
Yeah.
What are your suggestions, Lisa?
I feel like this board isn't operating as a board in the evaluation. Because this is the board that hires and addresses any issues, and that it should be more collaborative as this board. It seems like it's more collaborative at the local board level than it is at this level, and that
Just
seems
skipping
odd.
over.
But
All right.
So
So
you
you
think about
prefer to have it in like an executive session format, and we all just talk about the evaluation
well,
on in the individual input, right?
Well, I just think like it sounded like we were going back to our local boards and having a conversation with local boards. And we were filling out our forms with our local boards.
No, there would be a separate document that's basically, that we haven't created yet, but it would be, what are his strengths, what are his weaknesses, something.
It would be based off the rubric,
It
would be
would-
the foundation
yeah,
of the
But it would be,
questions that are-
shorter, and it would be filled out by those members. And then that information, it wasn't we didn't plan a lot of discussion time, it was more reflection time.
Okay.
Would you prefer to have it, like Eric said, in executive session, then each of us can speak?
I
Our
think,
feelings?
I mean, we have seen in the past where maybe one board has a concern that other boards have no idea about. And it seems odd that you wouldn't have that conversation at this level with the people that are seated at the table. That it would just be hand in the rubric and then take the number. That just seems a little,
So would you like to discuss, so we have the questions that are coming back from the local boards that are answered. would you want to discuss what those results were
Sure.
at this level?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's important. I mean, I think that responses coming back from Middletown Wells may be very different than coming back from Quarry Valley. We have very different school systems, so I think those are conversations that should
So-
take place here, but
So maybe
that's just my,
So maybe instead of having it due at the meeting, we could have it submitted beforehand so we can talk about the average in executive session on the June meeting. And then the executive committee would then present it to him afterwards. That would be fine with me.
Yeah, but I think what the whole goal is that when we take, local information.
Which we'll get in May.
And then even the actual evaluation rubric that we have, and even though if it's filled out beforehand by individual members, we still talk about and do that evaluation piece. Because I think we could be talking about two different things where we take one document and we all decide how to evaluate, right? Or we look at individual feedback on that same document. I'm not sure exactly which one you're referring to, which method.
So if we're going to evaluate each local board, what the answers are to the questions, then I would say that before the SU board fills out the rubric, that we have that discussion about what each local board is filling, how the superintendent has performed during the year.
So we're doing the local boards in May with the
Yeah.
hope that we can complete this in June. So I think what Lisa is saying is that she wants to have more of a discussion with the whole board versus just the executive committee. And if we submit the rubric, what our feeling is separately prior to the board meeting in June, we can discuss the averages instead of just having the executive committee collate the answers. We can do it as a board. I'm okay with that.
sure.
We just don't want to add extra meetings and like to have it done in June. George?
Just to be clear, the final evaluation is being done by the executive committee.
So I believe, Chris, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that the bylaws say something about the executive committee is responsible.
Bylaws just state the executive committee will, and the superintendent will code out goals.
Okay. Oh, that just the goals, not the.
But the
So
The executive-
basically, the executive committee was just taking the information from the board
The
members.
final report.
The final report, just making it neat, just putting it all together.
Collating the
That would
information.
be the final evaluation.
That was our,
By the executive.
that's what our thought.
Okay.
It was
And not
just,
changing anything.
we're not changing it, we're just gathering the
Stating
information.
the
But
facts.
I think what Lisa is saying is that it would be worthwhile to have a discussion before finalizing it.
Well, the thing about that is that the executive committee can collate the information. The executive committee cannot hire or fire Chris. It's the
No,
board
exactly.
as a whole. And I think that's what Lisa's point was, that even though the executive committee may be collating the information, that the discussion should be held here because we are the board who's responsible to hire and fire. So it shouldn't skip a step.
It,
So who's the executive committee?
it's the chair of each board
Just the
and the
chair.
SU board.
Okay. Are these-
Of each local board?
I mean, how much more conversation are we getting from the local discussion to here to like redundancy of meetings? Like, as long as each board's represented at that executive committee, you should have the sum of the parts. Like when the three of us come out of Rutland Town, I don't see a lot of value in regurgitating the three of us having the same conversation we just had at a meeting before, to then have you guys, to then Tina taking that same conversation we had 3 times into the next meeting. As long as each district or region has its representation on the executive committee, why,
Because the executive board can't hire or fire Chris.
but we're evaluating, we're not firing them.
That's,
Yeah.
but
Or
still,
hiring on the spot or them in the future.
he is our employee and we are responsible for him and he is to us. And so to leave people out of that discussion,
But you're not, because we
Yes,
had the
you
conversation
could
like
be,
4
because-
times.
if Middletown has issues on a particular portion of that evaluation, it's important that this board knows what that is, so we can see if there's a trend, a pattern, it's being addressed, not addressed.
So
If
what,
we have the same problem over here, because we don't know that it's happening over there.
but what I'm saying is that we are going to take all the information. So, you know, the members from Middletown Springs, their grades will be lower, their numbers, right? And their comments will be added into the document that we would share with everyone. We were just going to basically take the information, put it together,
We're,
distribute to Chris and to the board.
I don't want to get lost in the weeds, but I just want to understand the process. You take the individual reports, you make a common report. What is being proposed is you're going to present it to this board for feedback, but then ultimately it's your report, your final evaluation.
We can do that. So basically that would happen at the June meeting, so that
Okay.
everyone would have to put the information in beforehand. It would just,
But this board has a chance to have our say.
yeah, it
And you
sounds
would
like that would be.
Hopefully take whatever we have to say into consideration.
Well,
But the
that-
final,
it's not consideration, it's the board's decision.
Yeah.
So
so it is
basically,
our report then.
right, it's
our
your
final
report. We were just going to make
evaluation.
it
Okay, that's what I'm
neat, put
trying to
everything
find out.
together.
Instead of having a meeting, we're compiling that information beforehand.
The whole objective is to have an actual formal written evaluation, not just some meeting
No,
in
no,
the
no, no, no.
superintendent's office.
You're compiling it, you're presenting it to us,
Yeah.
now I understand, we approve it or not.
Right.
Okay, that's fair. That's all I wanted to know.
So we'll just make sure that the board does their work, gets their work in, so that we can have the averages ready to go for discussion in June.
And we can approve the
And then the
board.
whole board would approve it, and then we would,
Right.
the executive committee would present it to
So
them.
we have our say, and that's fine. Thank you.
Is that okay, Lisa?
Sure.
Okay. So, sounds good. So moving on to new business. If it's okay with the board, I was just going to move around the VSBA delegate and Bisbit proxy prior to goals and action plans under that section. So we need to name a delegate and a proxy from the SU for this event, which is happening, I believe, October 24th and 25th.
I nominate Eric. Eric M.
Okay.
So Eric will be attending.
Yes, I plan on, yes.
Any discussion?
Eric with an
With an M,
Yeah.
yes.
Anyone else plan on going?
I plan on going to. And I think Colin does too. Anyone else? Lisa, will you be there this year?
Do we need an alternate? Didn't we do that last year?
Yes, should be the alternates. You and I nominate Lisa and Colin to be alternates to that.
Lisa?
I mean,
At least not gonna be there.
Tina and Colin.
I'm
Sorry.
happy to.
I may go, I'm not sure.
You may go too, Meredith?
So we'll have 3.
Okay.
Okay,
Cool.
sounds great.
And there was one change, isn't one meeting, the annual, something happened,
Yeah,
one's a
so-
week apart.
The business meeting, I believe, was the 24th. It's at night and it's virtual. And then the 25th is the actual conference, the VSA-VSBA conference.
And any member can check into that, right?
Correct.
That just who's the voice, that's all.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. So anybody can check in and listen.
Anybody?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
who's the
We're doing
voice
something
will be
earlier?
for us. That's the point.
Okay. And that's
Yeah.
just at the SU level.
Right.
Misremember.
Eric will be the voice. Okay.
So, there you go. I think you filled it out. All right, I guess Mike made a motion, and so we'll have everyone in favor?
All right.
Any opposed? All right, so Eric will be our delegate, and Colin and I will be the alternates. All right, so SU goals, action plan, and protocols. So I don't have it in my packet what the template was. So let me get my computer out again. Are you able to share the template up there?
Yes, which one?
That would be easy. So while Chris is finding that, I just wanted to go over the 3 goals that we had kind of agreed on at our retreat that still need a little polishing and description. The first one was, at least annually, the board sets measurable goals and regularly reviews the progress toward those goals. Number 2, the board annually evaluates the effectiveness of community engagement and public communication efforts. And 3, at least annually, the board formally evaluates the performance of the superintendent based in part on the superintendent's progress toward meeting agreed upon goals. So Debbie Singheiser, who is our facilitator, has suggested trying to draw out action plans for our goals so that they were easier to follow. And we would be able to tell if we were making progress or not. All right, so for goal number 1.
So you do it, you can type, you open this up, you can type right into this document.
I can.
Yes. While I'm screen sharing. It should be shared with you already. You don't have to, but just say you have that.
And how
Through Google Docs, go to your Google Docs, right?
Yeah.
And then it should come. It should be live.
I'm still having trouble getting on.
Go to your drive, just type in action.
Oh no, I know. It's the internet. It's not. Something's funky with. Let me just get onto.
I can type if you want. I'll type if you want.
You don't mind? Sorry.
As long as you don't tell me I'm missing a comma or a,
Period. Semicolon. Apostrophe.
All right.
All right. I cannot promise.
Shoot.
All right. So for goal number 1, what steps will be initiated to achieve this goal?
Should we stick the goal?
And the board sets measurable goals and regularly reviews progress toward these goals.
So first of all, you have to decide when you're going to set the goals.
So, yeah. And then regularly and review progress throughout year, or
Well, I think
revisit.
you could, but I think you have to determine when you're going to set the goal, and then adopt the goal, and then you can look at when you're going to review the goal.
So adopt goal and review goals.
Well, I think they should be separate.
Well, it says action steps, so you're listing all the steps in this section. Maybe review goals periodically. And then evaluate success of goal at the end. Okay. Yeah.
Third bullet point should be set a schedule.
What was that?
The review goals periodically. Is that what you mean?
How do we achieve the goal? Set the schedule. Kind of like, how do you walk through a school year? Day one's whatever it is, September, August, whatever. Kind of walk this up. You set a schedule, and you back your way into the rest of the action items. But if we don't have a schedule,
Thinking like quarterly or thinking like quarterly or something?
You see,
maybe?
the annual work plan.
Oh, the annual.
You
Okay.
create work plan.
Well, in July, we're at the retreat, we're, it says on our schedule here for setting the review for Chris is the SU goals in July.
The SU, well, the board goals are in July,
Mm-hmm.
and then the SU goals are July, August, however much time we have to figure
Okay.
this out.
So it makes sense to do it in an August retreat.
Do an August school retreat.
That's when the goals will be set.
I would think.
And that's would be. I wouldn't put that in the action steps. We have to fill in the other
Yeah.
boxes here.
The who.
Can we go
Be the SU.
move on to who now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the SU board.
That's all that matters right there. That's all you need.
Just throw stuff up.
So September board meeting for the annual work plan. We're working on this. For the
Well,
evaluation.
you'd want parallel timing on that is the same as what the superintendent's working on, so you want them sort of parallel.
Exactly.
Right. That's what I was kind of saying.
I think a good review monitor would be January. I mean,
We were thinking December and March for the superintendent.
If this isn't for the superintendent, this is for us.
So-
Probably dealing with
Oh,
An entirely different new board, so it's like,
it's a,
that's not even a good perspective at that point. I mean,
you're also dealing, if you haven't, you will be dealing with town meeting day too, so you got a lot on your plate that
it's
They're
not
very-
that, but you're dealing with you could be with a
board
whole
who
different
has no experience.
forum, so.
So you need to be before
I
that.
think the new board or not, once we've taken these the goals that we have and we're creating a plan of action here. Basically, doesn't matter who's chair. Like the work should still continue on, and the board should still continue that work until new goals are developed. For example.
yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, we're setting fiscal goals on a July to June calendar. Shouldn't matter who the board is. You fulfill that. But I think
But
January.
you're evaluating, different people are coming in and evaluating. What's the fiscal aspect of this? I mean,
We're setting goals in July. It doesn't matter who's on the board. You check in. You don't get to change the goals when you step onto the board in March.
You don't get to change the goals, but the perspective of who's on the board may change, because if you have somebody that's coming in new and you ask them a question, they have no experience because they haven't spent the last year in the process of achieving that goal. I think that's kind of what Lisa's
So it's
saying.
continuity. You can't
I understand.
change the goals.
Yeah,
when-
continuity. You're not
I'm not
changing
saying
the goals.
change the goals.
I think having it,
See,
the update in March is actually helpful for new board members because they can see what he's working on and have that quarter of the year until the formal evaluation a few months later to kind of see the process.
I thought this was about our goals, the board goals, not the
Yeah.
Well,
superintendent's.
the reason that this came into the discussion is because we had thought that we would have check-ins with Chris on his superintendent goals in December and March. So we were talking about time frame for when we're gonna check in for the goals. It doesn't have to be the same time, or they could go along the same manner.
I don't really care about March. That's my personal opinion. I think it's more appropriate in January. That way they can report on a full half year cycle. I mean, we front load the calendar, so December 3rd, I mean, allowing a review after the full year. January gives us a full half year perspective. That's why I was thinking January, because it allows, there's a whole lot of things that happen from the beginning of December to the end versus having our check-in. Let's say if our meeting was later in the month, that would make sense, but I'd rather see it January. As far as a quarterly check-in in March, here nor there, we're going to be inundated with budget season at that point.
Well, why don't we go with a semi-annual? Like Colin said, we can always ask for another one in between. So we set the goal for at least twice. At least we're working towards that. If we find we need it more, then we can adjust it again.
Yeah. But, in a perfect world, hopefully it's a great check-in, but if the wheels are falling off the bus in January, then we can assess, hey, we need a check-in March. But I think it's hard. I mean, we're just setting it in September too. It's really, we got to let things develop. It's hard to.
Mm-hmm. That's fine. We can go from there, see how we feel in January.
So what would you like me to type on this?
So
what's your, when the board's going to review
goal review January.
Okay. Thank you.
And then maybe more dates TBD.
I would even put that in because like we can change the goal. So let's go for that and see where it's at. And we don't have to. We can adjust it on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
We can invite Debbie back for a review.
Anyone need additional training to be able to complete this work? I don't think so. Say no.
We would just need the data to be able to. We would need the data to be able to review it. So we'd have to have some information as to. But I don't know if that would require somebody from the outside other than.
Yeah, I guess her question was misleading, but yeah, resources needed. We need.
Can I
Just change it.
just from my perspective, I think it's hard for you to identify training if you don't even have a goal. So you don't know what you're training for. At this particular point, it says the board sets measurable goals. So right now, what's the training about? So if I look at goals and that are prioritized along with the strategic plan, I know the training that I may need, the admin may need, the staff may need in order to move that forward. But I think that's where
Maybe just maybe information on goal setting, what are SMART goals, things like that. I'm not saying that
Well, it depends on.
Yeah, but I'm saying that could be an answer that would go on with it. So I don't know. Maybe sharing a SMART goal definition or how to with the board documents would be helpful, or just having it in our resource bucket or something.
Send Chris to like 30-hour immersion training.
And I'll come back
Between
to
here and
train
September.
But I'm just, yeah, but I think it's like, but is this my work or is this the board work?
Board work.
'Cause I feel like
This
I'm
is not your
doing a lot of work now, so
This is our work. It's just where
I had to go out and find SMART goals for you and.
No, I'm not asking you to find SMART
Immersion
Well,
goals.
like drop it in, but I'm just trying to understand what this is.
I'm just trying to answer this question. Maybe it just doesn't matter.
Well, I think what I was saying is, at this particular, we can say not start yet because we're still.
We don't know.
We don't know.
It's TBD.
That's fine.
Well, and also this is a working document, so it says resources needed, professional development. I mean, if anyone thinks of something else that could be in place of that, because again, I'm trying to think how this applies to what we're doing, but
Yeah, this is not Chris, this is us.
yeah.
I think the only resources needed really are time and commitment on a personal level to, not necessarily have to expand meetings here, but do some of this mental work at home and be prepared. And it's really what goal setting is. It's time. It's not like we throw more money at it. We had a mediator, which is great, but I think it's just more
Blocking off desk time for.
yeah, for yourself and walking in being prepared, which I think people are doing. So certain other goals will certainly have resources or training for sure that we could pinpoint, but this one's just
Board member participation on your own.
Yeah.
To be ready.
And what I meant before about a smart tools resource was just like sending a link to what a smart goal is. I wasn't asking. I was just thinking that might be
Sure.
helpful.
Okay, but I'm just saying, is that training though?
It's a resource
But is that-
of what a smart goal is when we're trying to develop goals.
Right, but is that a resource that a board member could very easily in their time spend 5 minutes to Google a smart goal resource that I'm just
If a
saying,
board
like,
member doesn't know what a SMART goal is, it could be helpful if it were, I'm just saying.
if the board would like me to set up a workshop around developing a SMART goal, I can. But I think just by sending here's a link,
Mhm.
I don't think would really qualify as training because,
It hasn't happened.
right.
It's
And I
just,
think
a,
it's
re-
also,
just a
right.
reference.
We don't know if we need it
Right.
Right.
yet either. Okay, so,
During the goal setting process, that probably would be a good time to go over what a SMART goal is. Somebody raises their hand, comes up with an idea. Number one, is it specific enough? Number two, how do we measure it? That's something that's measurable. Because if it's not, then how are we going to judge our success or progress?
Mhm.
But that would be at July when we're setting the goals, I think.
next goal.
Next one.
The board annually evaluates the effectiveness of community engagement and public communication efforts.
On this,
We don't have,
too, is
that's not what
Debbie
we
Sue
have.
was the-
Oh, sorry, she switched. All right.
Yep.
At least annually, the board formally evaluates the performance of the superintendent based in part on the superintendent's progress toward meeting agreed upon goals. So action steps were executive committee forum plan for
Member feedback.
member-
Timeline and evaluation process.
Eric, what was that? I'm sorry.
the next bullet,
Uh,
create timeline.
no, the executive
Oh.
committee develops the timeline
Oh,
and
you were
the
just adding to-
process. And then I think it comes to the SU board for adoption.
Right, so he kind of combined that all.
Okay, okay.
Was that? Is that there?
And then follow plan would be an action step.
Follow up.
Present evaluation to superintendent and board.
Do you need any feedback from the district boards on this?
I think that'll be in the next column, wouldn't it? That'd be in the next column, wouldn't it? I think that's where your point would be.
Well, I think the local input is just part of the whole,
It's part of the plan.
the plan and the timeline. Like, don't think that has to be spelled out in this.
And then reflect on process would be the end. So the SU board would be responsible for following this? Summer would be the first part. And then August through June, or even August through July for the next part, because July is when we're going to do the reflection. June would be presenting the final evaluation. And July would be reflect on the process. No? None?
What?
For this one?
And I'm sure it encompasses that, but I forgive me for interjecting. Maybe it's not appropriate, but when and if we do, when do we talk comp? When do we negotiate with you individually, or is it part of the?
It's December.
December, January is when we start talking about whether or not the board would like to engage in a discussion around renewing my contract or moving on. So I think out of fairness to both parties. So if there's a decision that we are moving on, that the board has an opportunity to find an ideal candidate, as well as,
Sure.
yeah.
I just feel like somehow evaluation should be like somehow wrapped into that. Like,
Yeah, so-
how are we so far away calendar wise?
So the evaluation, if you think of it more like a report card. And so based on the evaluation, you develop goals to work on the weak spots for the next year. And then by December, you'll know if there's improvement being made or not. So it's not like you do this and that is your 100% decision. This is a work plan. This is what we're striving towards.
Sure, but like in my world, your review and evaluation correlates right along the side of when we're talking comp and adjustments.
Yeah.
Not just subject to.
Which is one of the reasons that we
Well, it's
had
like, how are we doing?
an update in December, which is also one of the reasons we had one of the updates in December.
As long as that's in the plan somewhere, I'm not trying to isolate that. I'm just saying that it should be directly correlated where someone feels they're knocking it out of the park, they have a strong stance when we're walking into negotiations with them.
Right, December and March are reviews that are set. We could add to that if we had to.
Well, we can add in the work plan, and that I think we should, that discuss contract in December or something like
Just saying they should be a little more correlated, and not with Chris, but just in general for the perpetuity of the board. If your evaluation is not in line with the conversation of non-renewal, that particular person has a lot of stance to be like, why am I not getting non-renewed when I don't even have an evaluation?
So I think when you're having that evaluation of, how, based on the evaluation that was completed in June, we developed these goals to try to, see improvement. And December, you see no improvement
I'm just,
I think that
fine.
that correlates well.
Yeah, just as long as it's in there somewhere, because
Yeah.
just leaves a lot of areas.
And who's providing the update? You, the executive committee?
No, Chris is going to be updating us on where he's at with the goals, and we're having discussion about how we feel as a board.
So this feels like it's more Chris work than our work.
Should be our work.
So, okay.
Well, I guess that's something that we can, depends on how part one, executive committee form, superintendent evaluation plan timeline rolls out, but leaving it to self-evaluation, again, leaves a lot of room for,
Well, it's not
I
just.
think I'm doing great.
It's his.
I mean, I'm just saying.
It's his self-evaluation and our discussion of how he's meeting the goals. It's a combination.
I'm trying to just
Yeah.
bring it back to legalities, and again, we don't have any problems now, but in the future.
It's kind of where we're at right now.
Open-ended.
Yeah.
How am I doing? We were doing great until we're not. Now we're talking contract. Now we're talking. There's been.
Why am I
You look around the
surprised?
state. There's and any place else in employment. Again, I'm not saying it's particular to our current situation, but we should have processes in
It's
place.
kind of disjointed
In
because
perpetuity.
you have a fiscal year that starts in July, you have a school year that starts for all intensive purposes in September, and then by regulation, we have to offer contracts in January. So it's not a even process. It makes it
Yeah.
difficult. So do you do your evaluation from January to January? You know what I'm saying? So it's
Something I consider as a build and play. That's it.
It's
I'll do
it's
that.
not like you're at a corporation where every quarter you have an evaluation.
Yeah.
I think Colin's right. To have
But he should know. I mean, everybody should know where you stand.
So the equivalent is what we have to do with teachers. And you're right, Colin. It is when, from an outside perspective, it is a little off. Where there are determinations that we have to make about teachers, really in January, February, because we start looking at it, we have to notify and let people know and offer contracts. Many decisions really are made really around December-ish, right on there. That's the evaluation process. We try to wrap up by February at the absolute latest, which when you look at it, you still have 4 months of the year left, which is a large chunk of time in a school year, and you're making a determination. So there are a lot of, from an admin's perspective, there are a lot of decisions that have to be made early on about, is this individual someone that we want to, that has growth potential that we can work with, or is this an individual that we're, moving on from? So this falls in that same line too, I think. So,
But are they setting their goals when they come back, or have they set their goals before they left?
So
Because the difference
Right.
is a lot of people live in the fiscal year. It's not unique just to us. Every municipality lives in the fiscal year.
Yep.
So you need to be being evaluated on your current year. You shouldn't be being evaluated on the year past. So teachers are setting their goals unless it's changed when you come back in the fall.
correct.
Your administrator sitting down with you and setting your goals, and they're evaluating you. So that there's that correlation. You're being evaluated in the current year.
And so I don't have to evaluate one person. You got to evaluate a million teachers and your staff.
Kind of understand what you're saying.
We get one shot. And I'll trust you on this, that I feel we're in a good spot. So as you guys talk about the executive committee, you and with limited input from me, does this work, or is there something better we could be doing? Because I see a lot of bad situations around. I'm not saying they're in one, but just can we prevent that from boards having bad, or vice versa, a soup not getting a fair shake? Or is this the best option as you guys talk through this time plan? I'm not suggesting there's something better. I'm just saying.
Are you saying
And from your experience too, bringing that in is because I see a lot of bad situations where they get stuck with a bad person, or vice versa, someone gets a bad shake from a significant 6-8 month period.
I think that
Can we help?
from a superintendent's perspective, and I'll speak as a whole, not just me personally. The one thing a superintendent will always ask for is just transparency. How are they being evaluated? So it doesn't necessarily matter timeline, whether it happened in December, January, or June or July. It's that transparency in terms of what's being asked of me by my board or my boards. And, obviously our SU has certain complexities that other supervisory districts don't. Some superintendents will, directly report to one board. So like Slate Valley has one board. We have an SU board, but yet there are still, 3 other local operational boards, and so how does that all work together? I think that's what we're all trying to figure out. How does everyone provide input? And for me, it's interesting because, or I say for the superintendent in this role, it's interesting because while Slate Valley really is getting on one page, like that one board's page, here sometimes it feels like you have to get on 4 different pages in a best case scenario, and even on those 4 different pages, you might have 3 or 4 other pages. So you might have a lot of pages, a lot of agendas floating around that you're trying to juggle or balance. While, let's say at Slate Valley, you have that one board, and it's very clear to align priorities with that one board and develop relations with that one board, as opposed to in a supervisory union. I think that's just the reality of that. And so I think that's so a superintendent really, go back to your original question, is more just what is expected of this position, and how am I going to be held accountable for that, and then what is that plan, but also if that's what is there, what else is being used as part of that. Just need to know that, because we have 20 some different board members, and I think 20 different board members have a different perception of what the role is or what should be doing, and that's how it is. So
yeah, fair enough. I think a lot of what we're talking about is vagueness, and where other districts you can see in different states, it's like you're the greatest guy in the world. It's test scores to me, so that's what I want, and you could have the best high five in every. So I think transparency is good to have. It's like, or passing budgets. So, and some of this is just so vague. Like, we want a good environment. I don't know what that means. So as long as we have that open discussion, like that, I appreciate that. Because other places will be like that. Like, that's great, Chris, but 75% failed. And do that. Sure. And that's what we're not. That's not my purpose. So it's nice to have those conversations out loud. I'm done. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay. In progress, I said.
Third roll, Tina. What are we doing?
Yes.
Yep.
So the board evaluates the effectiveness of community engagement and public communication efforts.
Did your budget pass or fail? Sorry.
What steps will be initiated to achieve this goal?
This is board. This is not the superintendent. So as a board, how do we do that?
I'd like to see the metrics on our website. Anything digital that we can capture.
Have a place that they can go.
I mean, the Google printouts. I mean, that it's hard to. We don't have a marketing person engaging the community. Did you read the paper? Did you read the Facebook? But at least we have Facebook. We have a website. Are people hitting it? I mean, some data we should be tracking. Are there more? What is it around? And there's all these resources that are part of the digital world, because we're trying to figure out how to engage them. That's the conversation we have. I don't have the answers by any means, but there's some data out there that we should be tracking. And that's the engagement part. So,
Should we be looking at what our member boards are doing?
Yep.
Because they're more likely to contact them than us, someone with a concern.
I think we've had some of the sharing. Lisa certainly does. Obviously, we're different demographics, different communities, but what's working for you guys, but also a lot of us find ourselves having those meetings with the same 20 people that are engaged? How do
Sure.
we, what's
But I
working,
think,
what's not?
what is the engagement goal? What are we trying to accomplish?
So are we sending out, in the past, did you guys send out questionnaires to parents and constituents
About,
about our schools?
sure.
I think for time to time.
We're looking to engage the public. I'm just trying to think of different ways to do that.
Methodology.
Yeah. Yeah. That's all.
I mean, one of our goals in Wellsprings is to contact people who don't have children in the school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's huge.
Even though we have passed our budget every year, it's been very, very close. And we don't know if we're communicating with the rest of the voters, not the school families.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of our effort to connect with them. And I think we should be doing the same overall.
Because we need to market ourselves like I would
That's a
market
process.
my business.
That's a process though, right?
There's so much misinformation out there.
Right.
That's part of the problem.
Yep.
People think we're 15 years ago doing the same things. Our town keeps listing our meeting dates incorrectly. 15 years ago on their annual report. But there's more important stuff that's going on too. But I have been asked, when are your meetings? Well, they're on our website. You have a website. So the more we can do to get information out, I think the better off we'll be. In the interest of transparency.
We need to determine what vehicle to use to get that information out.
Yeah, man, I think that's a great idea, like a survey, to be honest. I don't know the questions. And it pains me, we're going to be, at least I know Rutland County is this next 5 years with the budgetary cycle and the increases that are coming and fighting folks. And half of me is like, oh, people should be informed, but we have to go out to them and let's do it as an SU. I think some of those questions could be, do you know what the SU is? I mean, we're fighting this supervisory assessment from the first question out of people's mouths. Like, do you know what it is? Do you know who we're aligned
There's
with?
so many people in administration.
I don't want to have too many questions,
Like I
but
said.
to help engage them. What do you listen to? What do you read?
Not everybody knows that Corey Valley is
Right.
Greater Rutland County Supervisory Union. They don't know that Ira Middle
Couldn't name a
Township-
town
Right.
if you ask them to.
Right.
So,
Right.
but maybe it's the survey. Who knows what kind of response we'll get. But.
I also think in elections, we miss opportunities to put surveys out to collect data back. We have people coming to vote, and to have a survey of something with 5 questions maybe to help us feedback through the year, I think we missed that opportunity.
And there will
And
be
it-
a lot of people out.
And it may not be the same questionnaire for each town. It may be slightly different based on what that board determines it needs. But I think that's a perfect opportunity that we're not capturing.
We tried that this
That's
year.
great. Fill it out right now. And put it back
It
in.
may take a couple years for it to get to
And we
work.
can have it compiled at the
But if I could-
same time.
Well, if I could finish, it didn't work because it's really dependent on the clerk, on the town clerk. They're the ones who get to say what information's there, and they said you can leave these here, but we can't have anyone handing them out. We can't have anyone potentially influencing the budget vote. So I think
That's
You
only
can
true if
stand
you do it
outside
in the
and do
building.
it, only
If you
when
do it
you're
outside
within
the
so
building,
many
do it.
feet of the voting
Right.
booth.
Yeah.
So
Right. It's
that's a
only,
misinformed clerk.
right. Right.
not inside. I said inside.
Right.
Oh,
That's
well,
Outside,
So to your point, I think this is a great year.
Campaign.
Probably not in town hall day, not the best time to do it.
Right.
Like, hey, vote for our budget. Can you do the survey? But I think during this national election is a great time to be like, hey, can you
Because
just
then
spend a
you
couple minutes, hit this, and give it back to us?
And then you could put a QR code on there and say, okay, in 3 weeks, 4 weeks,
See the
we're
results.
gonna have the results, so you can
Yeah.
go back and see
I
what
love
was
that.
said. And so, like, if the question was, do you know what Corey Valley, you know what that is? 80% did not. Well, the answer is, so you can give them an answer back right then, assuming that they go and look at it. But
then
you
the
can also
also-
follow up the next time you have it. Is the last time, remember that survey you took on the front side? These are the answers. Here's another survey we'd like you to take. So it's just a process.
Yeah, so I wanted to just continue what I was saying was, I think it's a great idea.
I
And
know
a
what
couple
you're
years
saying.
ago, we did it, and one of our town clerks was very supportive. We're passing out the survey with the ballots She was very accepting of it, didn't have a problem with it, but I think because this year there were 3 elections going on, they didn't want to deal with it. So how it's done, and I think it will make a huge difference. But it does. We got so many responses from that survey, just from one town. And we tried to repeat it, didn't work very well, but no.
Do we want to form a committee for engagement and try to look at into some of these strategies?
That
and
could be a who, right? Form committee.
Yeah, I think so, for sure.
that would be a step. Would be create a committee and then.
Didn't we have a community engagement or communication committee?
I don't think we've had one named for a while.
Not at the SU level.
A
Were we
communication.
hiring a person?
Communications, we have a communications committee. Is that the committee we want to charge for that? Or do we need a different committee? That's, I think.
Communications committee would probably be the right one,
You
but
think?
we don't have anyone in that committee right now. I don't think we named anybody to it.
So Wellsprings has had a community engagement committee for a couple of years until this year when we reorganized. We decided not to continue the committee because the committee pretty much did all the work it was going to be able to do. And so now we just kind of incorporate community engagement on the agenda. But you know, from what we from our local level, what we learned from that might be beneficial. So
when you're starting this type of process, maybe having a committee to explore options and
How to
gather
push
and put the information
communication,
together.
yeah.
Yeah, might be helpful.
I mean, we can.
And going back to Eric's point is that maybe if I went to Wells to hand something out, because I'm not being elected down there, I have nothing to do with that, but I am a board member. And Colin comes to West Rutland and Lisa goes to Rutland Town, so it avoids that.
I think if it's an SU committee and it's coming out of the SU, it's more professional to each town. But like this is information we're trying to get out as part of a supervisory union, not just Colin going to Rutland Town and then be like, I don't like you, get out of here. We're
Well, what I was thinking was we could do one or two things. We can have this committee, or we can just incorporate it into our SU agendas and have this conversation as a whole.
I just feel like some work needs to be done if you do want to look into the voting in November. I think if we just wait till the meeting to discuss, rather than have some
Framework.
maybe
Have some structure to it.
Yeah, have some
Yeah, I think
framework
that-
ahead of time.
yeah.
There's an opportunity in November, I think, to your point, Eric. I think there's some statutory issues we'll run up against in town hall where some clerks may say you're influencing, whether you're stepping outside the building or inside the building. It's going to create a political storm of why you guys here versus November's. It's a non-town meeting all day. It's everyone's coming out to vote, or at least the biggest portion of Vermonters are going to be showing up to those polls. It's an opportunity for us to get in front of people and give them something to get back to us, which is not a long time away from now. I think we should be as organized as we can.
Have to go to the transfer stations the weekend before the vote.
That's where things happen.
We've tried that. So it sounds like the board is, by consensus, wants to have a committee so that we can get moving on this. Is that correct?
Chris said he would head it up. A couple hours a week.
I got some free time on
Thursday. But I'd be happy. I'd be happy.
All right, Colin, thank you. Anyone else like to join Colin?
Please. Tim said he would. Actually, he just texted me. So he'll be happy to join.
It would be nice to have someone from each local district if possible.
I'll do it.
Was it Eric? Thank you.
I'll do it too.
I'll join Colin. Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
We're on fishing meetings. It's
and
quick.
Mike-
I'm not. You guys know I don't like to waste time.
You're good.
Any
with it,
input's
too?
welcome too. It's not. I don't have any.
Jeff, did you want to speak or you're just volunteering?
Volunteering. I want you to know I'm still here and I'm listening to everything.
Thank you, Jeff. All right. And Mike said he would help out too. So Colin, Eric, Jeff, and Mike.
Tim.
And possibly Tim.
Text.
And then at our next meeting, give us what you need or an update at our September meeting.
Yes.
And we'll just put that on our agenda so we'll have that discussion time. Thank you.
It's a committee meeting, that's a public meeting, it has to be.
Yes.
So meeting law applies.
Yeah. But Chris, I don't think you have to be there for that meeting. It's just
No, don't have to.
This is a process meeting. It's not it's a process meeting that the information from that meeting would then be presented to the board for the board to decide what to do with it.
Yep.
It's not the committee's job. It's they're just doing the framework, the process work of it.
Yeah.
Ideas, whatever. And then recommendations would come to the board, which would then.
And I think whatever we come out with and whatever we come at this board level, I just ask that we pass it through our legal team so they can give it a stamp of okay as we're walking into polls and all that stuff, whether it's outside, inside.
I think as needed. I mean, I don't think every little thing that the engagement committee just.
Not everything, but
Yeah.
whatever we decide to do, again, because I don't want to create more barriers in March for
Right.
people being like, oh, you were out there in November.
I think if you bring a recommendation from the committee, and then from there, the board as a whole can decide if it needs legal scrutiny or whatever.
The committee can do its own research to find out what ramifications may be.
Yeah. But running it by legal when needed is, I think, fine.
Costs money.
Right. That's why I think it should only be a board decision, depending on when you present something.
You just share it with me. I can.
Yeah.
Majority of the things you can just reach out to somebody like from out League of Cities and Towns or states, secretary's office, Secretary of State.
I know that clerks can restrict what happens inside. They cannot restrict what happens outside.
So monthly check-ins, I guess.
I'm just trying to move things along because
Yes.
Kyle reminded me we have 18 minutes, so I just wanted to.
I've been watching the clock. Got my little timeline cheat sheet here. All right.
Set myself up for more.
I think I think we could have some reflection again in July. How did we do? What can we do better?
Well, that
Or
would be,
even-
that'd be at the retreat, though, wouldn't it? Because we do an evaluation.
Yeah, at the retreat. Yeah. So I think retreat is going to be
retreat
reflection.
evaluation,
Yep.
reflection.
So we're doing that with the superintendent evaluation process, and now and our goals for last year.
So can I put together TBUD work plan dependent? So I think if the committee comes back with the draft of like a work plan, some
Yeah.
timeline, I think then that would be, I don't know, Colin, I'm not trying to speak on your behalf, but that'd be one of the things you'd probably look to do is just map out the year,
Yeah.
just some ideas just for, so, okay.
I think also define community as my recollection was it was encompassing our political folks as well as maybe our town clerks. It's not just speaking to our parents or our non-parent community members who are voters. It's how are we engaging everybody?
Right.
And I think a big portion of this conversation is can we move the dial on Montpelier at all? Because that directly ties into the fiscal ramifications that are in front of us. But so we can encompass all that.
Because that community engagement would be what we're doing, but we also could be what the challenges we're facing, and some of those challenges could be what's going on in Montpelier.
Well, I think as we all, at least in the community, and I know you guys had the same conversations with the community at large and the folks, whether they're for or against the budget, we're very upset with what's going on. If we can unite everyone and give them the facts of how so much is out of our control, at least they can point that to the people that are out there making decisions and maybe turn the inertia because we're in this for the next 10 years and we need help. And that's the voters and hopefully the folks we're voting in. And the more we can arm them with actual facts, not just whatever's out there, that they can have some impact.
Everyone happy with those?
It was nice having our state reps here at that one meeting, and maybe that's could be part of this periodic contact with them.
Yeah.
Possibly.
That may be with community.
Because that's where we'll get some facts from the Montpelier end. We can pass along.
So maybe inviting the reps as part of this engaging, inviting the reps in December. So once they're elected in November, just welcoming them to a meeting. they like to introduce themselves and hear from us.
And I don't know what extent we could, but extending that to other legislators, like the folks that are sponsoring these bills, it's not our local folks. If you look, some of them are on the education committee, but none of them have sponsored a bill. None of them wrote in a piece of legislation. And I'm
Some of them are not ranking, like,
not casting it out, but like Act 127, like
You're talking maybe about the chairman.
the folks that are signing their name to these before they're getting to the floor and not having communication with our soups. Not to say they're going to come down here, but get them on a Zoom. The folks in the back rooms, the Department of Education. These are the folks making the decisions. Our local people are, as they're telling you, they're
along for the ride.
They're listening to meetings and then they're reporting back to us versus actively being engaged. So the more we can get people, at least maybe they'll tell us, maybe they won't, but the more we're in front of them and telling them what we're facing, not just making their decisions in a bubble, which is what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And hopefully we can spur community folks to show up too. Like it's affecting our taxpayers. They're getting crippled. And so the decisions they make have huge ramifications for Vermont, not just what they decided looked good in a white paper they read out of some other state.
there you go. I mean, that's marketing that, oh, this person is going to be coming to our meeting. You may want to attend, or, you know.
Co-sponsors of Act 127 will be here. Come on.
No torches, no pitchforks.
Oh, how you can't afford your property tax bill.
All right. So the other part was that, so this was more board goals, and then the SU goals. We don't really have a whole lot of time left tonight, but Chris is trying to base his superintendent goals.
So I have my superintendent goals done. It's all based around the strategic plan.
If you want to share them.
I mean, I can share those with the committee, and then we can, because even I have a community engagement piece. I think Lisa, you were saying something about but I have something like by June 2025, enhance community engagement, improve communication across the district by implementing a comprehensive GRCSU communication plan that increases community event participation by 5%, improves stakeholder satisfaction with district communication by 10% as measured by annual surveys, ensures that at least 90% of parents, students, and staff are aware of and can access the new communication plan. So that's like a goal around community engagement, which is part of that SMART goal. So I have goals all centered around the academic, the school culture, as well as the community engagement. But I can share that with the committee, and then we can then bring that back
and have a discussion.
Because to be honest, I mean, the priority areas really should be strategic plan of the SU goals, and then so I'm already aligning that with that. If that's okay. So but there is that academic achievement. There's the VIT cap. There's also the FastBridge. So there's that proficiency and growth. So as well. So, and I have reviewed this with the admin team already. So they're aware.
Can you just drop that in our folder for us to see the goals?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, for the September meeting, I'll drop it in.
Yep, I think that's great.
Yeah.
Yep.
That'd be great.
All right.
All right. Is there anything else? General public comments? No one else is here. Our next meeting date is September 3rd at this building, and we will resume the staff and student highlights in September. Chris?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I will have no problem finding somebody who will come up.
Great.
How long would you?
10 minutes or less.
Okay. All right. Just want to make sure, because I know some people have like a mini version of a production will come in and solve.
Yeah, no, it's really, we want to know what's going on, but we have a lot of work to do too, so we want to keep it brief.
That's fine.
Yeah. And we do not need an executive session tonight.
Correct.
So I would like to request a report on the Wellness Center for the October meeting. I think that Bill did have it set up, and as we start to talk about budgets, I think it's reasonable to have that report then. I'd like to see data from last year to see what numbers were, because I know when I review what I listened to Bill say, I feel like I'm not meshing with what I heard this evening. So I just want to have a better understanding. I think there were some concerns that we voiced and,
No, I think Lisa, that's one, I think entirely appropriate, because I think as we look at our strategic plan,
sure.
that is one of the aspects of strategic plan is around the, this wellness program, and what that may look like. And I think it'd be good for the admin, and the board to discuss this publicly about what it is and what it should be and how we're gonna get there.
And what
Or
about
should, or even, if we- or should we get there? You know,
Right.
that's good to do.
maybe we could add in something about the life skills program?
I think they're separate.
Well, yeah, well, life skills and wellness are two different things, so I think it just depends on what.
So maybe we push that for
Yeah, I think we.
Okay.
Yeah, I
All
think.
right.
I think Eric, I think what you're looking at is with the closure of certain
Yeah.
schools and the the impact is it brings back. I think that's another good discussion for us to have, but I think that's a little bit different than the wellness.
Agreed.
Yeah,
Thanks.
but I think that's we'll have an update on that as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Meredith?
I just want to be really careful when we do discuss these things.
Yep.
That it's done in a completely anonymous fashion.
Yep.
The identifying information that was sort of offered this evening was not very appropriate.
Yeah, I'm not asking for anything like that. I'm asking for like data, total numbers we had last year.
I'm not speaking to anything you're asking about.
Okay,
yeah,
I just
no.
want to make sure
Caution.
that
Just
whatever-
caution.
Sure.
Thank you, Meredith.
Exactly.
Yes, Mary, that's been noted and it's been addressed already. So thank you.
Thank you. Before we move on, I just want to make sure that we have a motion to approve the goals from this evening.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, George. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Whew. Any other agenda items for next meeting?
And the next meeting about the FastBridge, are we actually having a presentation?
So it's going to be less presentation, more questions.
So I guess for me, that's
Wait.
that.
No, it's all right. Go
No.
ahead. Just go ahead. It's all.
I guess we've been talking about communication and transparency. Those are things that, in my opinion, we want to communicate out with the public, that we want recorded for people to be able to see. Me just having the data and reviewing it isn't the same as the data being shared out that someone else can pull up this meeting in 3 months and review it and look at it, or someone thinking about coming to one of these districts to look at it. So I guess I'm not on board with that idea.
So my understanding, and speaking with Lisa before she left last week, was that there would still be a presentation to the board, but she would not go through, like, if there's like 40 slides, would not be going through all 40 slides.
Sure.
It'd go through the first part, present the information that was necessary, then to answer any questions that the board may have. So.
And then that data would be put into, available to the public.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because that's two different things we just discussed.
It won't be like before where she went through every single slide, is what my understanding. Maybe I'm wrong, but it would be, showing the data and going through the bright spots and the weaknesses and what we're doing next.
Well, I do know when she
Okay.
put together the presentation, the feedback that she received at last meeting, she took that into account, and so she adjusted the slides and was prepared to discuss where board members provide feedback around information that they felt was necessary to have a discussion.
Sure.
So I
Yeah.
think that was part of the
100%.
conversation
I
that
just
she
want to be
had.
clear that we're having the presentation here.
Right, it wasn't
That
just
it's
going to be,
being-
hey, you
yeah.
have the slides, you have any questions, then we move on. No.
Okay,
there was
because
still-
that's the
but it
way
was
it
not going
seemed
to
at the
be
onset.
that lengthy 35, 40 minute
Okay, understood.
through slides.
It just seemed on the onset, we had the information, we should review it, have questions, send to you, we'll discuss at the next meeting.
Well, so
Right, initially it was supposed to be discussed tonight, but Lisa was on vacation, so
Sure,
therefore.
I don't have an issue with that, yeah.
So that,
I just want to be clear that it's actually a presentation. I think if we're
Yes.
not doing presentations here, then I'm not really sure why we're showing up. Because
there will be a
if we
presentation.
want to talk about communication, that's a huge component.
yes.
Thank you for sharing.
Because I do think there's still a lot of misunderstandings and misconceptions about FastBridge
Yes.
that board members, staff, parents have that, Lisa, will continue to attempt to clean up.
Right, and the more we
address.
talk about it, the more it cleans that up, I think.
And the same for the CIP.
Correct. Right. And the CIP, will the board just have to formally approve the CIP as well?
Just the same for the budget. It's all that, it's all informational.
Okay, sorry.
Okay. Any other agendas? Items for next time?
I just want to make the work plan, or the goals, I dropped a PDF copy into the GRCSU board resource folder, so you all have
Thank
a
you.
copy of that to look at.
Appreciate it.
Can we get a request? I'll make the motion after the request. You're gonna request a motion to end, to adjourn?
Sure.
Then I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Mike.
Process.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
I'll wait for you.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Meeting ends at 7:56 PM.